All right, so let's talk about imagination and creativity. Something I know a lot about doing my creative work. I've been creative ever since I was a child. Drawing. I used to spend my time in high school with people getting upset with me because instead of watching, my calculus trigonometry teacher teaching math on the board, there was an instance where I would be drawing. Even in physics or other classes, I would just draw. And people would be like, hey, that you got to pay attention. And it's like, no, I did the homework. I paid attention to this. I'm ahead. Learning, and it's not meant to be braggy, it's just learning came naturally to me. So, in those instances where I was bored with what the teachers were teaching, I would just draw all day long, draw in study hall, draw on the bus, draw. Never realized that was part of my spiritual path until much later. And that's how spirit art was born. And I learned a lot about imagination through that process, but I never expected to learn how imagination and creativity are tied together to spirituality. Imagination, at the core definition that we use in common day, commonplace conversations, is that it is something fictional that you create with your mind, something not real. This is true. There's a subset of our brain that can do this. But imagination also means, and this is a legit definition, I think it's Merriam-Webster and most of the other dictionaries have variations of this definition as one of, how a lot of words have multiple definitions from the beginnings of ancient times and on. Imagination means to experience or perceive something not wholly seen by the physical senses. It's one of the definitions. Something to that effect. Think about that for example for a minute. To experience or perceive something not wholly seen or perceived by the physical senses. It does not mean fiction. Intuition could be related to imagination, clairvoyance, clairaudience, prophetic visions, feeling energy. That could all be related to imagination. Creativity truly is the act of using imagination to create something that fictionally does not exist. You are creating it of your own mind without spiritual help, without spiritual senses. But how do you know the difference? How do you know what you're seeing in your mind or hearing is not just creativity, is not just the desire to want something? What I've learned through the years is it's a simple answer. Was it easy? Things that are spiritually in tune with our clairvoyance, clairaudience, with spiritual information, downloads, experiences, they're easy. And when I say they're easy, what I mean is you don't have to work at figuring out the details. What that means is if you see the image of a being pop into your head and it pops in like that, boom, it's real. It's telepathy, it's clairvoyancy. It's really there. If you walk into a room and you hear voices and they say something very specific, very quick, and you have that question of, did I think that? How many of you out there think about this? How many times do you go through the day thinking, did I think that? Was that my thought? That doesn't feel like my thought. It wasn't an imagination. It wasn't your mind just creating things. It's telepathy incoming. Creativity is difficult. When I wrote my books, I sat down and spent 6 months, usually minimum, on each book just thinking about how that story is going to play out. Start with some small details, the next week a few more, the next week a few more, plan it out, see it see it in my mind, play the scenes and the scenarios over and over again, figure out all the details, what the characters are doing. In the end, they never ran the same way. The characters took on a life of their own, as if they were real, and I was tapping into, possibly another dimension or universe of existence, which is something I can talk about later in a different video, about creativity actually tapping into other timelines, universes, all that. But creativity is difficult. It's difficult because we have to figure out the details. We have to have our mind imagine them. We go, okay, I have this human here. What are they wearing? What color is their hair? What color is their eyes? What's their motivation? Why are they in this scene? Why are they even in this building? What got them here? What are they going to do next? What are they going to say? Do they have an accent? What words do they use? Are they an academic? Are they somebody from the streets? Who are they? We have to think of these details. Creativity is difficult. Imagination, spiritual imagination, perceiving what you don't see with your physical senses, what really isn't there, it's easy. You look over and there's a Sasquatch standing there. You wake up at night and there's an ET by your bed. You're walking around during the day, you ask yourself a question, and all of a sudden the answer pops in, but it doesn't just pop in, it pops in with a download of a paragraph of information that you're like, how the hell do I know this all of a sudden? That is not fictional imagination. Kids are running around talking about imaginary friends, monsters in the closet, faeries flying through the garden, or seeing grandma after she's passed. It's not imagination. It's not fictional imagination. It's not, because it's easy. It just happens. That's the key. It just happens. If you're creating it with your mind, it's difficult. You have to work at it. You have to process it. You have to create it with your mind. It's not as easy as just poof, there's a Sasquatch, like walking around the woods. So think about that as you go on your journey, because a lot of people struggle with that. Is it my imagination, or is it, and when I say, is it my creative imagination? Is it a fictional imagination? Or is it me experiencing what my physical senses can't fully perceive? And you have to ask yourself those questions. And one of the things that can help you out is just ask that simple question. Was it easy to experience? Or did I have to fill in all the details? Did I have to think and create all the details? True experience, things that are not creative, fictional imagination, are going to be super easy. They're just going to come to you. They're just going to happen. You're not going to have to work on them. So that's something to understand moving forward. And to teach your children this concept, to teach others this concept, to help them understand, because people come at this topic of what we do spiritually and they go, it's just your imagination. They tell children, imaginary friends, they're not real. Programs their brain to remove those images from their reality. That's why children are so awake. And then when they get to about 7 and they're in the school systems and experiencing all this, no, that's just your imagination. They program the brain to filter everything out and to close the third eye. So we have to change the label and term of imagination and teach people the truth of it, that imagination has nothing to do with fictional, creative outcomes. It has more to do with perceiving what we don't see or perceive with our physical senses. And in a video I'll do in the future at some point, it's not technically part of this book or this class, but if you talk about it in the comments, it will give me motivation based on how many people are interested in hearing about it, is this idea that fictional creative imagination could actually be tapping into the energies of other dimensions, other worlds, other timelines, and even, and this is kind of what I believe to some degree to be most of it, creating pocket dimensions of existence that really exist, using our own energy and our own mind to bring it into existence through manifestation and creating it. That's a possibility. But remember, we created it. We had to work at it. We had to put energy into it. It wasn't easy. We had to figure out our way to get there. Everything else, if it's easy, you're experiencing it. Just trust it. Believe in it. Trust in yourself. And don't allow people to bring you down just because they say you're a creative, you imagined it, it's a fiction, it's all in your mind. Don't let them bring you down. Trust yourself, trust your experiences, and ask yourself, was it easy or was it difficult? And easy in the sense of, was the experience easy to know all the details, or is it difficult when I try to remember it, and do I have to fill everything in and try to create it on my own? It's one of the key differences to figuring out if you really are working a creative scenario of desire in your mind, or you're working on something outside of yourself that is a true experience. Thank you for watching. Deepest gratitude to all of you, and then we'll get started with the next chapter, which I do not remember the name of, but that will be coming up.